unknown link and
Okay, so today we're going to be going over how to make a static website. So basically, how to make and host your own website in AWS. So we're going to get started in a few minutes because I know like some people come a little bit late, some people take some time to come here. So we're going to get started at around 12:04, just to let some people come in, and just to let some last people in, unless people were in or coming in a bit late. So at around 12:04, we'll get started with the presentation. All right, it's 12:04, so I think we can get started for today. So today, the first lesson that we're going to be doing, and the thing that I'm going to be presenting, is how to host a static website with Amazon Web Services. So just like for a little bit of context, like a static website, basically just a website that has like an HTML page, and a website that just has like shows text but doesn't change based on like what the user inputs. Just like shows, let's say like it shows like a video or shows like an image or shows just like a blank set of options. Like it doesn't let you like change anything with like a database or anything. It's just a static website. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to be going over a little bit in slides, like just like the general idea of what I'm trying to do. And then I'm going to actually be doing like walking through how to do it on the console, sharing my screen and showing you guys how exactly you're supposed to go through it, some like the errors that come up, and how the different ways you can host a static website on AWS, and how each way is different than the other, each way is better or worse than the other options. So just to get started, the first way that we're going to be making this a static website is using an S3 bucket. So this way is a little bit simpler. So the first thing you have to do is first create, and don't worry, like if you guys don't understand the steps from here, I'm going to be walking through the steps and actually making the website live here as I share my screen. So first you have to create an S3 bucket, then you upload the files you want. So you have to upload like the HTML files you want for your website and anything else you need. Then you make that bucket an object public. So by default, S3 buckets aren't really public. They're not available to the entire internet. So what you have to do is actually take your S3 bucket and publish it to the internet and allow people to access it from wherever they are. And then that's basically because you don't want your website to just be accessed by you. You want anyone who has a URL to your site to be able to access it. And then you can configure hosting that static website with S3, and Amazon has like a really convenient built-in way to do that takes a lot of the effort out of it. And then the final step is just to access the website and see what you guys got done. And since this first demo is actually really, really simple, and it works well for a lot of situations, but there's certain pros and cons that come with it that I'll share with you after we go through this first demo. And just to sort of review, I know like when we went over AWS and S3, it was a couple weeks ago. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of the basics again on how AWS and S3 works before we get into the actual live demo of it. So some basics about S3 is that S3 is a way to store files, kind of like how you store files on a computer, except instead of storing things in folders, you store them in what's called buckets. And these buckets can be anywhere from like 0 bytes to 5 terabytes. They can hold a lot of information. The second thing is, and you'll see more about this as we go through the demo, is that the S3 bucket names are unique. You can't have 2 buckets with the same name across the global namespace, which sounds kind of complicated, but basically what it means is if I make a bucket called Aegis Navigator Demo, then no one else in the world can have a bucket named Aegis Navigator Demo. I'm the only person who has that name. So all the names are unique across the globe. So no 2 buckets can ever have the same name, because if they're hosted over the internet, then no 2 websites can point to different things. You can't have google.com point to Google, google.com also point to YouTube. The one like S3 URL can only point towards one bucket. So each one of the names has to be unique. You can store multiple types of files across the internet, and since it's hosted over HTTP, when you upload or when you get files, it sends you a 200 success request back. And the way you upload data to an S3 bucket is, let's say you are the user, then you upload or you download a file, because you can both read and write from an S3 bucket. You upload or download an object through the internet. It's not like through like your files on your computer. You don't need to have internet to access them. But for S3, since it's hosted on the internet, hosted on the cloud, you need to have internet to upload and download it. And you upload or download it from the internet, and it goes into S3, it goes into the bucket. So a little bit more into it is like whatever files you upload goes through HTTP, through Amazon's API, which is just basically a fancy way of saying it takes the files and it sort of interfaces them to the object storage on Amazon's cloud. And you can either make them public or private based on whatever you need and based on the needs of the files that you're uploading. And so I'll go more over the pros and cons after we go through this first demo. So I'm going to get started with this first demo. And this is basically just hosting a static website with Amazon S3 in a sort of basic format. And no, there's no tests or anything for this. This is just to show you guys, just to give you guys some information, just for you guys to play around with some of the Amazon Web Services, some of the stuff that happens in AWS, and just like everything else in the Young Scholar program. None of these webinars have any tests or quizzes or any homework or anything like that. It's just for you guys to learn, for you guys to have fun, and you guys to play around with some of the new technologies that are coming out these days. Because there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out in the field of CS. So I'm going to stop sharing that slideshow and I'm going to start sharing this screen, I believe. Okay. Let me guys know if you can see my AWS console. Actually, one second. Let me see if I can share. Stop sharing. See if I can share this separately. Okay. Screen one, allow. All right, so here we are on the AWS page, and this is basically the basic management console. So just to make sure you guys can see like my browser right now, right, with the big marker, the webinar room, and the client area. Just like say in the chat, you can see my browser. It doesn't necessarily have to be the page. All right. Once you get some people saying that like they can see my browser, then okay. All right. So it's showing in, then I'll get started. So the first thing you need to do with anything that has to do with AWS is to actually access AWS, to actually get into the console somehow. And the easiest way to do it is through what's called the AWS Management Console. So this is just, it's a website that lets you do everything with the cloud. Like anything you want with the cloud, this website has it, and it lets you access it. And so you get the access to everyone aws.amazon.com/console. And let's say you log into the cloud. And so the way that, like setting up an account in Amazon Web Services, in the original slideshow that I gave you for like the basics of AWS, I shared like a video on how to make an account because it's a little bit of an involved process. But basically, I can reshare that link if you want, but it's in that slideshow. And the ways that you set up an AWS account involves a lot of like different types of authentication and a lot of different like a lot of like in-depth privacy things that come with it, because the cloud can be used for a lot of different powerful things. So I'm going to just log into my AWS console account. So the root user is basically, just to go back, log back in. So the root user is the owner of an account, and then IAM user is like if you're a company, then you don't want everyone to have access to the root user. That means that person has access to everything in the company. But let's say you're like the root user is like the owner of the company, then the IAM users could be like the dev team or the financial team or anything like that. But since I'm not a company, I'm just doing this like personally. I am my own root user, and I can log in, and then they have like captchas, obviously, because there's a lot of security checks that go into it. And then you have to put in your passwords. And then there's also what's called multi-factor authentication. So what multi-factor authentication is the way that I have it set up is it sends a message to an app on my phone called Google Authenticator. So I can't log in to my AWS account. Like if someone gets my username and password, they can't log into my AWS account unless they also have my phone and have access to my Authenticator app. And then so once I logged in, it sent a code to my phone, and I can enter that code here, and it logs me into the AWS console. So now, once we're here, there's multiple different ways you can actually like go about navigating the Amazon Web Services cloud. So the first way is you can go into services, and if you sort of know what you're doing, you know that since we're trying to go to S3, S3 is a storage, and then you can go to S3 from here. Or you can favorite as well, so it shows up on the side. Like if I favorite S3, it shows up here. So if I frequently access S3, I can join it like that. Or I can go up here, and let's say I don't know what place it's in. I can just type in S3 and access it like that. So now that I'm in S3, what I have to do is I have to create a bucket. If I want to make a website, I have to start by obviously creating a bucket. So let's say I create a bucket, and this is what I was talking about, where the bucket name must be globally unique. Like no one, if I make a bucket called test, then no one else in the world can have a bucket named test. Otherwise, I can't create this bucket. So for the sake of this demo, just to make sure that no one else takes it, I'll use HS Navigator test demo, and that'll be my bucket name. And you deploy buckets in certain regions. So you always want to deploy your bucket in the region that's closest to you, or no, not closest to you, closest to people that use your site. Since I'm just using this as a test, I'm using the region closest to me. Since I'm in New Jersey, the US East region in North Virginia is the closest one to me. But if you have customers in like Asia or customers in like Europe, then it's probably best to put your bucket in the areas closest to people that are going to use your website. And then this is stuff we'll go into later. So normally, by default, public access is not allowed to a bucket. Like only you can access your own bucket, not anyone else who has a URL. And we'll look more into this later. Then bucket versioning. I'm not changing any of these options. I'm just sort of walking through like what they do. So bucket versioning, like I said in the previous AWS demo, is basically when you can have different versions of the files in your bucket. So let's say you want to make sure that every time you make a change to your bucket, it saves the previous version of it. So that let's say you by accidentally delete something. If you have versioning enabled, then you can roll back your bucket to a point where you didn't delete that file. So you can make sure that even if you accidentally delete something or accidentally upload something publicly that you shouldn't have, you can always have a backup to roll back to just in case you ever make a mistake. And then tags, and then default encryption. So encryption is like, do you want the bucket to automatically encrypt files stored in the bucket? But since we don't really care about that all that much in this demo, we don't have to enable that. Then object locked is kind of like bucket versioning, but it's basically meant to prevent you from like deleting or overwriting objects for a fixed amount of time. So let's say you want to make sure that once I upload a file, then make sure that no matter what, for like 10 days, I cannot delete this file or overwrite it. Then that's what this is used for. And so now we don't really need to change all those settings, but now we can just create a bucket. And we created a bucket called HS Navigator Test Demo in the US East region, but the buckets and objects are not public. So now since we want to change some settings with the bucket, you just have to click the bucket and it opens up this new page that it tells you a lot more information about how the bucket works. So now what I'm going to do is I have some files like already prepared for this demonstration. So what you can do is you can upload files and add files. And the files that I want to add are air.html, index.html, and this PNG file. And I'll go over what these files are. So I'll upload these 3 files, and I can either drag them in or click them in from my File Explorer, and then give permissions or properties if I want to, and just click upload, and the upload succeeded. And it shows you like a confirmation, like, okay, these 3 files, and they're all uploaded. This one's an HTML, this one's an image, and this one's an HTML. And close it out, and I'm going to show you what those files actually are. One second. One second. I just lost the file. Okay, this is it. So edit with Notepad++. So this is the HTML file that I'm using. So this file is pretty basic. It's just like a really, really basic index.html file, which is just like the main file they need for a website is called index.html. And so if you guys know a little bit about HTML, it just starts with a header and ends with the ending. And all I have is a header that's like the name of the website that says, this is Mehar Johal's AWS static website build demo. And then just one piece of text in it that says, welcome to the HS Navigator AWS static website demo page, and an image. So it's just like a really, really basic site. It's not like anything special. It's just some text and an image, just to give you guys a demonstration for like how this all works. So the next thing that we have to do is, so let's say I go to this index.html and I go to this and I see like an object URL. So what this object URL is it's the URL that lets you access this file from the internet. So if you want to access this file over the internet, this is the URL that lets you do it. And if I paste this in and hit enter, it says access denied. And why does it say access denied? Well, because if you remember back to when we were setting this bucket up, this is not public. Like this file, this index.html file, is not a public file. In fact, it's just like everything else in the bucket. It's actually a private file, so no one can access it over the internet. I can only access it through this console. But let's say I want to make it public, then I click Object Actions, Make Public, and Make Public. But it says failed to edit access. Why can't I make this bucket? Why can't I make this file public? And the reason why is the public access is blocked because block public access settings are turned on for this bucket. So what it's saying is you can't make this file public. You can't make this index.html file public because your bucket is not public. So if your bucket is not public, if your folder is not public, then none of the files within it can be, because that's a breach of security. Like you can't have a folder be private, but some of the files within it be public. That doesn't make sense. You have to make the folder public first, and then you can make whatever files you want within it public. So what we can do is hit close, go back to Aws Navigator test demo, and then go to permissions, and say, look, edit block public access in bucket settings. If you hit edit, you can turn on public access and hit save. And a lot of things in AWS, when you're doing big changes like this, like when you're deleting files or making files public, it'll say to confirm the settings, enter something in the field. So this one says enter confirm. So I type in confirm, hit confirm, and now the objects in my bucket can be public. And notice that it says can be. So these files are not all public. Like if I go here and I refresh this, it's still not available. Like it's still, I can't access it. Just because the bucket is public doesn't mean all the files within it are. Each one of them has individual like properties, so I can make them public. So let's say now I go here, click make public on the index.html file, I click it, no errors came up. Because now that my bucket is public, all the files within it can be. So I hit close, and now I can copy this URL again, go here, and look, there comes my website. But if you notice, this image doesn't show up because the image is still not public. So each one of the files is individually made public or private. But if you want to make them all at once, that's what we're going to do now. So let's say I don't want to go through, let's say like 100 files. I don't want to go through each and every one of them and make them all public. That's going to take a lot of time. So instead, if you want to apply something to an entire bucket, if you want to apply a certain setting to an entire bucket, what you can do is add something called a bucket policy. So bucket policy makes a change to access for everything in the bucket, or for certain things if you want to do that. And bucket policies are typically written in JSON, which is like a format for like a lot of policies and a lot of like data in coding in general. But if, let's say, I don't know how to write in JSON, I don't know like how to do stuff in JSON, there's a tool that Amazon provides called the policy generator. And the policy generator is a tool that lets you like create policies in AWS without having any knowledge of JSON beforehand. So first of all, we just select the policy type. And so we're doing an S3 bucket policy. We want to make it allow all the files. So if you want to do all the files, you put a star here. Like if you remember from the Unix and the SQL demo, star means all. And then actions, there's a lot of actions you can see, but the action that we want to focus on is get object. We want all the objects to be able to be accessed. And the resource name you can copy directly from here the bucket ARN and paste that in, and then put slash star because you want the bucket ARN and all the files within it. And add statement. So that added that statement, and you can just click generate policy and copy all this JSON that it generated for you. Like you don't have to do any of the JSON work yourself. You copy that, you go in here, you paste in, and save changes. And now you can see our bucket is publicly accessible. So now everything about our bucket is publicly accessible. So now if I refresh this, the image shows up as well. So now that's basically how to host a static website. Now if we go here, we have this URL, hsnavigator testdemo.s3.amazonwebservices.com, and we've hosted a static website. This website can be accessed by anyone. So you guys can go through this website right now and see this page and get access to it. So now we've hosted a static website on AWS, but there's a couple of pros and cons that come with this. That's what I want to go over now. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to start sharing my slideshow once again. Oh, wow. All right. So what are the pros and cons that come with that way of doing it? So the pros and cons that come with that way of doing it are that the pros are that it's very easy to build that site. It only takes a few clicks to build it. It only takes a few clicks to build it, and it's really easy to make. Like as you guys saw, it took like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, and we've already had a public and a static website hosted. But some cons are that while it is very easy to build, it's really, really slow as the users are located in other geographical regions. Like remember, I put that website in the in the Northeast America region in North Virginia. If someone from California, from Europe, or from India wants to access it, then it's going to be really, really slow for them because they're going to be trying to get the files from their location, and trying to get the files from the Northeast region is going to be really, really, really slow. And if you guys remember, the domain name is going to be like, it's like hsnavigator.testdemo.amazon.s3.static. all of that. And it's a really, really long domain name. And it's often inconvenient for people that try to type that in or people that try to remember that. So there's a couple ways to fix that, and that's what we're going to be doing in the next few demos. So now the next demo that you could do, and we're going to be going to demo 3 off the bat, but the next thing you can do is do the same thing you did before, but register a domain. So what we're going to do is actually get a domain name, like google.com is a domain name, youtube.com is a domain name. So get a domain name that's actually convenient to use, and set our S3 bucket to be pointed to that domain name, so that whenever someone goes to that domain name, it automatically shows them whatever's on our S3 bucket. So instead of having to remember that long URL, they can just remember that short one and still get access to all the files we want. So we do that. The way we do that is through Amazon AWS Route 53, which is a domain name service. And so, basically what a domain name service is, what a DNS is it's used to convert human-friendly domain names into an IP, an Internet Protocol address. So computers, we can read domain names easily, like Amazon.com, we can read that easily. But computers can't really get anything from Amazon.com. What they need to do all their, to get all the data from the site is what's called an IP address. And the way that generally the internet works is that the user with a web browser types in www.amazon.com, and once they type that in, then that URL, that domain name, gets sent to what's called a DNS server, and that provides an IP address back to the computer. Then the computer makes a request to the IP address and then gets the data back. So in order to do that DNS server stuff on Amazon, they have their own AWS domain name service included in what's called Route 53. And the good thing about Amazon Web Services is it's cost effective, it's secure, it's highly available, it's available independent in each region, and it comes in IPv4 and IPv6. So there's a lot of benefits to using Amazon's domain name service, especially for applications that you're building mainly in the cloud. So the issue with the first demo that we had, like I said before, is that it would take multiple hops to reach a destination based on the user request. So let's say I host a bucket in like the Northeast Virginia region, but someone from California or from the Midwest wants to access it. They have to make a bunch of hops across different AWS data centers just to get to the files that I hosted. So it takes a lot of time and it's really, really slow for them to access those files. But what we can do is we can use domain name web services in Cloudfront. So what Cloudfront, if you guys don't remember, lets you do is it lets you use what's called edge locations. So edge locations cache the data. Let's say I upload my data here, and there's an edge location here. So when a user from the Midwest wants to get that data, instead of having to do all of this, like hop here to 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 get the request, what they can do instead is they can just have what they can do is they can just request the information, and it goes from me to an edge location, and then from the edge location directly to them. So it's faster access, it's much less hops, much less time for the request to travel, and it uses the edge location, so it's really fast across the globe. So with demo 2, without using CloudFront, it's easier to configure with 2 clicks, and you can use the domain name, but it's still slow based on the user and S3 bucket location, and it's not secure. But with CloudFront in demo 3, which is what I'm going to do, not only is it available across the globe, it's also secure as well. And so these are the sort of basic steps that I'm going to be going over. So again, what is CloudFront? I'll go back to that slide in a little bit. So what is CloudFront? Like, what are the edge locations? CloudFront is a content delivery network for Amazon. And like I said before, the way it works is by sending your data to what's called edge locations all across the world. Let's say before I was in the Northeast and there was an edge location near me. Then if someone in the Midwest wants to access that data, they just have to access it from the edge location nearest to them instead of having to hop all the way to me. And that works across the globe as well. Like there's edge locations in almost all of the regions. So if a user in Europe wants to access it, then all they have to do is get it from a Europe edge location instead of having to get it from all the way in the US, and which would take a lot of time and be like really, really slow. So having that sort of like geographic proximity, being close to the consumer's location, means lower latency, a fast and better user experience. It's highly available. It reduces cost, and it's secure. It's a lot more secure than just having someone directly access your S3 bucket. And this is just like some basics on how S3 on how CloudFront works, which we went over in the original AWS slide, which is that if someone requests an object, it requests content, then it gets that object and it sends it to an edge, gets the request into an edge location. Then that edge location goes to the bucket, gets the content back, and then sends that back to the user. So it takes 4 steps on the first transaction. But from then on, if any other user wants to access that content, then all they have to do is go straight to the edge location and straight back. They don't have to go through all the convoluted steps that take them from the edge location to the bucket and the bucket back. They can go straight from the edge location and straight back at a much faster speed than what would be normally possible. And the final thing before we get started on the demo is that CloudFront uses what's called HTTPS. And HTTPS, you guys probably have all seen it when you're doing when you're all typing in URLs. You see like the lock on the top of your screen or the lock next to your browser bar. And in URL, just say HTTP versus HTTPS. And what HTTPS is basically means is HTTP secure. That's literally what it stands for. The S stands for secure. So why do you want that HTTPS? Why do you want secure? Well, first of all, it's confidential. So confidentiality means it prevents the information from falling into hands of people who shouldn't be able to get it. The next thing is integrity. This is a CIA model, which I'll go over more tomorrow in a cybersecurity demo. But it's and another factor of HTTPS is integrity, which makes sure that whatever files you're accessing, they haven't been tampered with, they haven't been altered. They're the same across everyone who's actually accessing the site, and they're making sure that no one who shouldn't be able to make changes can make changes. And the final thing is it's available. Available means that whenever you want to get that website, whenever you want to get that information, it's always there and it's always reliably accessible. Those are sort of the key factors that come with HTTPS. And the other factors that come with it are user trust. Like if you see a website and it's not secure, like you don't want to use that website because you don't know if you can trust your data on that website. You don't know if you can trust using that website. But another thing that comes with this is what's called SEO. And SEO stands for search engine optimization, which sounds kind of complicated, but it basically means how do I get search engines like Google, Bing, and Yahoo to recommend my content more? Like the more secure your website is, the better it is, the more these search engines will want to recommend your website and show that site off, which is what you want. You want more customers. You want more customers, then you have to like try more to get SEO. And now I'm going to go through how to actually do this demo, how to actually make that website with a domain name with Cloudfront live, and actually walk through how to do all that. So let me start sharing my screen again. All right. I'm going to. So now what we can do is. Okay, so now the services that we go to, we have this Aegis Navigator test demo bucket publicly available. So now what we have to do is we have to go to Route 53, which is the Amazon Web Services domain. So let's say Route 53. If you guys don't know where it is here, then all you have to do is search for it. Route 53. But before that, what we have to do is we have to actually get a domain. Like we can't make a website with a domain name if we don't have a domain name. And usually domain names cost money, but there's certain sites like this one that we found called Freenom, which basically lets you get domain names for free. So let's say I want to register a new domain. Then I can type a domain, HS Navigator static demo test, and then check the availability. And sites like these are like a little bit finicky at times, but they usually should work. Okay, so I got HS Navigator static demo test.ml. It's just a random domain name, and I get it for free. So continue. Okay, so that just went through the process of how to get a domain, and it's really like you just have to do is register a new domain, search for whatever name you want if it's available, and then just keep clicking through. And now you're able to go to My Domains and see that Aegis Navigator static demo.test.ml, and now I have this domain. And I can go to Manage Domain, and now this is where we're doing most of the work. But if you see, if I go to this URL, Aegis Navigator static demo test.ml, if I go here and I paste that in and I go to the website, like nothing's going to show up. There's nothing on that website. There's nothing there. There's no URLs, no DNS attached to it. There's no IP address attached to it. So it just loads infinitely and doesn't actually take you to anything new because there's nothing attached to it. But now what we're going to be doing is actually adding stuff to that website. So the first thing you have to do is go to Amazon Route 53, which is, like I mentioned before, the DNS that Amazon Web Services provides for you, and create what's called a hosted zone. And a hosted zone is basically the way that it's a container that holds information about how you want to route traffic for a domain. So it's basically how you work with domains in Amazon Web Services. So we copy this domain name that we have, we paste that in for domain name. Description is optional, and we want it public because we want everyone on the internet to be able to access it. And we can click Create Hosted Zone. And it makes a bunch of these different things. It makes a bunch of these like records and stuff that might not make sense right now, but basically what you have to know is this NS stands for name servers. And name servers are what the user, like when you go to a browser, you type in Amazon.com, then your computer will try to contact these name servers to get the IP address information about the website. So these name servers are what tells your browser what IP address that website you're trying to access is. So now that you have these name servers here, what you have to do is go to your Freenom. If you make it from Freenom or make it from wherever you want, all like domain name websites have this. You go to management tools or wherever it is on your site and click name servers and use custom name servers. So now what we have to do is a little bit tedious, but basically just take each one of these name servers, copy it, go to the client area, paste it in. Take all these, copy them, paste it in. Take this one, copy it, paste it in. And the final one, take this one, copy, paste it in. And make sure you get rid of these dots on the end. And hit change name servers. And it's loading and setting up those name servers. All right, and changes were saved successfully. So now we can go back to Amazon Web S3, and we have this. We have these record names available in there. And now what we can do is the next service that we have to go through is Cloudfront, because now that we have our domain name set up, we have to go to Cloudfront and actually set up that global content delivery network. I'm going to delete this one. This one was when I was testing from before, and create a new distribution. And now, so Cloudfront domains require an origin for them. So the origin that we want for a Cloudfront distribution is obviously the S3 bucket that we made, hsnav test demo. And don't use OAI, yeah, because we want public access to the internet. And origin shields, a viewer protocol policy, none of this stuff you have to change right now. A lot of the changes we're going to make as we go along. We want to use all edge locations across the world, so anyone across the world can access this. And now what we can do is go ahead and create our distribution. So now that we have this distribution made, this is our Cloudfront distribution. And now what we need to do is add an alternate domain name. So we have this domain name here, our hsnav static demo test.ml, and we need to add that domain name to this Cloudfront bucket. So we go to settings, edit, and we go here and we try adding an alternate domain name. An alternate domain name lets you use a custom domain. So instead of using the S3 bucket that we had, what we can do is add a custom domain for ourselves. And our custom domain name is HS Navigator static demo test. So we paste that in, paste, and we hit save changes. But look, it says to add an alternate domain name, CNAME, to a Cloudfront distribution, you must attach a trusted certificate that validates your authorization to use the domain name. So what that means is, like I mentioned before, if we try putting in HS Navigator static demo test.ml and we try like adding that as an alternate domain name, it doesn't let us do that because we don't have HTTPS set up. Cloudfront only like distributes information over HTTPS because it only distributes secure information. And since we don't have the website set up for HTTPS yet, it won't let us add this alternate domain name. But thankfully, Amazon Web Services has a service of that as well. And you can go here and click Request Certificate. And AWS Certificate Manager lets you make HTTPS certificates for your domain names directly off Amazon Web Services. So we add our domain name. We click Next. We want DNS validation because that's what we're working with. We don't have to add any tags. Click Review. And we're going to be giving this website, this HS Navigator static demo test.ml, a certificate so that instead of being HTTP, it will be HTTPS. Confirm and request. And then what we can do here is add this to our Route 53 records. So now our CloudFront distribution is going to be added to our Route 53 records, and then it will know to redirect our whatever like requests are being sent to it through this CloudFront record. Create. Success. And then we click continue. And we just had to wait for this certificate to be made. These are for like a testing thing that I was doing before. Oh, and look, our domain name, the status was issued. So now we have an HTTPS certificate issued. Well, just like that. So now we can go to here, refresh it, and look, HS Navigator static demo test.ml has an SSL certificate added to it. So now what we can do is we can go and click Save Changes, and it works because now our website has an HTTPS certificate attached to it, so we can send that information over CloudFront. And the next thing that we have to do is, I believe, not here, origins, edits. Okay, now this we have to change. So if you go to our distribution again, we go to behaviors. And another thing that we have to change just to make sure this works is that once we go into your behaviors, which basically tells you like how that CloudFront distribution works, you have to click edit and redirect HTTP to HTTPS to make sure that no matter what, when someone goes to our website, they're always on HTTPS because we want all the users to make sure that our website, to know that our website is secure, and we want the greatest search engine optimization so that no matter what, it'll always redirect your HTTP to HTTPS. Save that. And now that's changed. And one of the last things that we have to do is just go back to Route 53. Now that we have CloudFront all set up, and create a record for CloudFront. So before on here, all we have is just the normal HS Navigator demo test, the normal name servers. Now what we have to do is go here, click alias, and route traffic from our domain name to a CloudFront distribution, and select the one that we have. And if you guys notice here, like I'm just going to do simple routing for now, but before when I was talking about Cloudfront in my first demonstration, my first presentation, I was talking about the different types of like policies you can use, like simple routing, weighted geolocation, geolocation latencies, so on and so forth. This is where you change that. And we create that record. And the record for Aegis Navigator static demo test.ml was successfully created. So now what we can do is instead of going to this URL, we can try going to close this and try going to Aegis Navigator static demo test, but it shows access denied. But if we try to travel the index.html, look, now instead of trying to go through here, it says Aegis Navigator static demo test3.s3 to AmazonWebServices.com, we can just go Aegis Navigator static demo test.ml/index.html. And there's a difference here. This one's HTTPS, but it's served over S3 Amazon Web Services. This one is HTTPS, but it's served after our own custom domain name. It's served after our own custom domain name, has the image, has everything. And we can choose whatever domain we wanted. So if we wanted like hsnavigator.com, instead of this really complicated URL, we've now served a static website over Cloudfront distribution. So you guys can access this website as well. And if any users across the world want to access the website, they can all do so with minimal latency and with greater performance and greater security. And just to tell you guys what the error.html does is it's for, like, let's say I try accessing a page that doesn't exist, like this. Then usually what it would do, like let's say I go here, try accessing that. Then it would basically it would let you do is show you go to this homepage and show you like, oh, this is the error page. Like this page is not supposed to show up. Actually, wait, let me see. Go back to S3. Go to our bucket. Go to properties. Oh, and edit enable static website hosting. And we could specify the index.html page and the error.html page and save the changes. So now if we refresh this page, once it loads up, that will now serve our website statically across the internet. And we can copy this bucket website and paste it in and show that it's not served over HTTP now. Now that it's a static website over S3, it's not served over HTTPS. It's served over HTTP, and it's not secure. But this one is secure, and it's served over HTTPS. And now I'm basically going to go over some of the pros and cons of the different types of sites and sort of wrap up this demonstration. So if I go back to our slideshow, Cloudfront distribution network. So the pros of this last demo was that it's very secure and reliable, and it's highly available as the data is copied at multiple edge locations all across the world. And the only real cons is it's a little more complex to configure and it costs a little bit more because you're using multiple services. But besides that, everything on the website end of it, like the security, the reliability, the latency, the availability, all of that, the best way you can host a static website or host a static website on Amazon is through this Cloudfront distribution and through Amazon S3. And that concludes my presentation and my demo on how to host a static website with Amazon S3. And if you guys want to have any questions about this, you can put them in the chat. Or if you have any questions after this is over, we're obviously going to upload the recording and upload the slideshow as well. And if you want to have any questions afterwards, you can send an email to aws@aegisnavigator.org to get a response back on some questions you have while going through this demo on your own. If you guys have any last questions in the chat, then you can send those now, and we'll sort of work through those as we get ready for our next presentation, which is a demo of Aws Navigator and some of the features that are on it. And if you guys don't have any questions, you can obviously head out and take a little bit of a break before you get ready for the next webinar on sort of a demo of Aws Navigator. So feel free to leave if you don't have any questions, and we'll get started. And the next one will be going on in a few minutes. And I think I'll actually end this one a little bit early, just so you guys can get a little bit stand up, stretch around, take a break before we get ready for our next one. So thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes with the next presentation.